Hey, this is Steven from LegitTechTutorials, and welcome back to Beginning Unity. Today we're going to continue from our last point, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple more things to make our game actually move and make it into an actual game. So for that, we're going to do some scripting and attaching stuff to our scripts to get it to do what we want it to do, and also to get the actual game mechanics to work correctly. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a few modifications. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to hit E to extend this box, the size, to make it an actual platform that we could run on. And then what I'm going to do is just get our main character, or in my case Poppy, and move him. Also, because this is red, don't worry about it. I was messing around with animations to get a good animation. So don't worry about that. I'll go over animations later. It's not going to be red for you, but don't worry about that. Okay, because I should have deleted it. Yes, I did delete it. Okay. So what we're going to do is, first things first, double-click your character under Scripts here, your character script, and it should still be attached to our main camera, which it is. And let's go ahead and open that up and mono develop. And really quick, if you haven't noticed, I changed this from game object to transform, capital K, uppercase T, transform. What we're going to do is basically we're going to do a couple things. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to start adding variables to have different things that we could change in game. Well, in the script, you know, during when game's running or whatnot. So what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the mechanic of the constant moving side scroller. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say constant moving side scroller, it's those side scroller games where your character's always constantly moving to the right. Most times right, not to the left, but he's constantly moving to the right. And he has to jump over obstacles. So the player itself cannot modify how fast and how slow it is moving to the right and to the left. And all we can control is whether we jump or we don't jump. Right? So also another thing that we're going to do is power-ups and have double jumps and whatnot, and we'll go over that code later. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do some speed control by adding more variables. So let me just go ahead and show you guys some of the stuff we're going to be adding. So we have speed integer is 5. So going over, you know, sort of the basics of programming, like I said, you should have a good understanding now if you go over those tutorial series I told you about, how to program in another tutorial series, and another basic one like Java, C, C++. But anyways, JavaScript's a little different, so I'm going to go over this again. Variable speed, variable of name speed of type integer is equal to 5. An integer, again, you cannot have a decimal place in it, but it could be positive or negative. That is going to be our speed going to the right, so we could adjust the speed per level or whatever, it doesn't matter. Then we're going to have jump, and basically what this is the force we're going to add to the jump. So by manipulating this in-game, we could change how high your character jumps to be realistic with what you want to do. So variable jump, this is something I'm going to go over later. Okay, so we're just going to leave the start. We're not going to really use it, so we're just going to leave it there just for good practices. And we're going to go ahead and establish the constant moving to the right. And for that, what we want to do is we want to, sorry about that. What we want to do is we want to have constantly our character moving to the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually manipulate the transform component of the character, meaning the X location. We want to move the X to the right, and that will move our character in the 3D world game space, or whatever you want to call it. So what we're going to do is we're going to call character, which you see pops up in our intelligent kind of like a finder, because we have identified it up top. So here you see it here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do dot transform, right? Dot local position dot x. So basically what that does is it says go to the character, manipulate the transform, and move the local position. Actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this back to a game object, because that's going to cause a problem down here. So let's go ahead and turn that back to a game object. So the character, where it's going to go, what the dot means, it means go to. So it goes character, go to, transform. So let me go ahead and trace that for you. So character, which is our main character, go to, transform, local position inside of the world, and your X position. I want to move that according to the speed. And what I'm going to do there is basically is plus equals, I'm going to say X, or I'm going to say speed plus time dot delta time. Okay, let me go over time dot delta time, and then I'll go over what that entire line is. So time dot delta time means that the time between frames, meaning that because we have, if this wasn't there, for example, if somebody was playing this with a faster computer and was getting a faster frame rate, and let's say the game was unlocked, wasn't V-synced or anything like that, and was getting a faster frame rate, your character would actually move faster than if I was playing on a phone. But if I do time.delta time, basically what that does is it goes into the Unity game engine and it sees the time between 2 frames. And by doing that time between 2 frames, it will actually sync all of our games together. So you're going to move exactly the same speed on your phone as you are on your computer, even though your computer could have 10 times as fast graphical capabilities and processing capabilities as your phone. They're going to move at the exact same rate because it'll compensate that by looking for the time between each frame. So that's what the time.delta time is the time between frames. And also we're going to also look into the documentation in this video as well as other videos as well, and I'll just look that up and show you guys in the documentation. So what this here does is, this is actually supposed to be a multiply. So basically what it does is says character.transform.localPosition.x. So it's basically saying we want to move the local position. And what do I mean by move? We want to add to it. So basically what this means, that plus equals, is it basically takes this whole thing, plugs it in here, and then adds this to it. So basically it's saying take this current value and add this value to it, then push this value into this, and now it's the new value. So that's what it means. Basically it's copying this, it's basically doing this. This is the exact same thing. If you don't like that, it's basically equal to this. These are the same exact thing. But obviously, if I control Z that, one looks a lot cleaner than the other. But that's basically what it means. It basically means add this value to this value. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to turn our X value positive, more positive. Right now, as you saw in the other, in our scene, it was a negative value. So it's going to make it more positive and eventually into a positive value. So what does that mean? Our character in the scene will move to one direction. So let's go ahead and check that out. So I actually deleted a bracket for some reason, somehow. So let's go ahead and build tutorial. And it just says I'd never use a system collection. And then we should be all good to go. So now when I run my game, it's going to snap to my main camera. It's going to maximize, snap to my main camera. And you actually might not even see them. The reason being is our main camera is all the way over there. Let's go ahead and move our main camera so we get it in the game preview. And there he goes. And you see we have another issue. Our camera does not follow our character. So how are we going to change that so that our camera follows our character? Well, it's actually very simple. Very similar to what we just did here. So what we're going to do is we need to bring in the game object of the camera. So we're going to call variable cam, and we're just going to take in the transform, because we don't need to manipulate that in any other way. If we did need to manipulate that, we'll just bring it back to game object, but right now we don't need to do anything like that. So what we're also going to add into our update, also another thing about this loop, I'm pretty sure I went over it in another series, but I'm going to go over it again, another video, is that start only runs once when we start the game, and update is every frame. So what this is going to do is it's going to move our character every frame, and also we want the camera to move with our character every frame, so it like tracks our character, right? So what I'm going to call this is cam dot local position dot x. Same exact thing as we saw earlier, except for the plus equals. We just want it to equals character dot transform dot local position dot x. So basically what that does is it makes the two local positions equal to each other. That way our camera will constantly be following our character. And you'll see in game that we don't really need to worry about when we jump about following the Y, because it's just going to make our player very dizzy. So we could just manually move it up to where we get the maximum view of the top. And I'll show you that in a second. So now let me go back through this line here. It says cam.localposition.x, and you notice that we don't have to talk to the transform because we already have our transform handed there. So all we have to do is talk to, because it's basically starting from here to there. So that's basically what we're starting. So in this case, cam is the name of our identifier to the transform, and we want the local position, and we want the x of the local position, and we want to equal that to the character.transform.local position. So pull the character's local position and change the camera to equal that local position. Alright, so let's go ahead and compile this. Also, another thing before I forget, at the end of the video, make sure you always, after every single video or in regular intervals, save your work. Save your scene, because you will lose it. You don't have to worry about this. As long as you build it often, you should be fine, because when you build in here, it compiles a script and it saves your script. But in here, I'm going to just go ahead and quickly save my scene so I don't lose my work in my scene. Alright, so that's basically what we're trying to do here, and now let's see if it works. An obvious mistake. A mistake that I miss and that I'm probably going to miss multiple times. What I forgot to do is plug in our main camera into the cam controller here. So all I need to do is drag the main camera into the cam controller, and now it's talking to the transform. Now you'll see it'll work. And check it out. Now our camera follows our character. Our character is completely framed in scene. Now also, I tried to fix those sprites, but they're very, very close, so I obviously need to do a little bit more work on that sprite atlas, trying to get them each frame perfect without having anything else in it. But that's the technicality. Alrighty. So here you see that my console's freaking out. Let me just clear that. It's clear. Okay. Alright, so now that we have that, we have all the basics done for that. All we're going to do now is we're going to add our jump. So we want the character to jump upwards. So what we're going to do is we're going to accept input from the user. So just in case this is going to be a like a mobile game, we'll just use like fire on click. So your left click, or in case of Unity, we call it fire 1. So what we're going to do is if input.get button, and you see all these different options. Very, very cool of Unity, the game engine, especially MonoDevelop. It helps you a lot here. You can see all different types of stuff. We're going to do get button down, get button up, get key down, get key up, get mouse button down, get mouse button up, get position, get rotation, get touch, stuff like that. But what we're going to do, so if you wanted to do a mobile game, you do probably like get touch, but I don't know how the controls map over. But we're going to do get button down, fire 1. Alright, so let me go ahead and explain this really quick. So we're going to go to the input library or the input class, and we're going to look for the method getButtonDown, and we're going to pass. This is what pass parameters. It's a parameter that we're passing to that method. We want it to get the fire 1. So when we left click, it's going to send. We're going to be waiting for that every frame. So this is very, very fast. So in the case of Unity on my computer, I can't remember exact frame rate, but it's really, really high. So this is almost instantaneous. It's looking and waiting for that click. And when I click it, it is going to do what's inside of the bracket. So this is an if method. And if you don't know the methods, obviously, like I said, you should have watched those videos. But the if method is basically a intelligent Boolean. It returns a Boolean value. So it's either true or false. So basically, if this is true, if I clicked the fire button, or in this case a left click, then it will go into these brackets and do what I tell it to do. Or you could have an else statement outside, which I don't have an else statement, and I'm not going to do an else statement. We would have to look at that. So we're going to do a couple basic things here. What we're going to do is, you could do two different things. You could do transform. You could just change a local position .y and just add it up, but it looks very weird because basically your character just teleports to that area and then falls. So what we want to do is we want to have it as a nice fluid descent. So what we basically need that to do is, this is going to require some tweaking. The reason being is that for this force to actually work, it needs to counteract the gravity acting on it. So if it doesn't counteract the gravity, it's not going to jump. So basically what this does is it goes into the game engine and adds a force. Basically something invisible pushes our character up and allows him to jump, just like your legs would if you were jumping in real life. You add a force, you accelerate upwards, then gravity accelerates you downwards, you change direction, change velocity. So what it does is it goes into the Rigidbody 2D, which is basically interacting with our game engine, and adds that force. And we told it a vector 2. A vector 2, if you're familiar with math, you'd be familiar what a vector is. But there's two different types of vectors. There's also one-dimensional vectors. So there's one-dimensional vectors, two-dimensional vectors, three-dimensional vectors, and onwards. But in game engines, there's only 1, 2, and 3. So 2 dimensions means that we're going to ignore the x. So we're just going to have the x, which is left and right, and then we're going to have up and down, which is y. So basically what we're going to do is we want the vector 2 to go up, which is x and y position. In this case, up is the y position. We want that position, and we're going to multiply it by our jump variable here. So let's go ahead and build that and see if we have any errors. I misspelled rigid. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is do this and get component rigid body. Sorry about that, I had to get this rigid body to work. So basically what I did is I created a new variable, rigid body, because I didn't want to just keep finding that component and having to add stuff to it. So so it would allow me to jump through a couple things and just hold one extra variable that I could reference to. So what I'll just call it is, I already know what it is, so I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna call this character body. That way I can do exactly what I want to do with it. So let's go ahead and call this character body. So basically, character body is of type rigid body, and I'm going to add a force upwards because I guess there was some libraries that were deprecated that are now obsolete. So let's go ahead and bring this up, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we drag our character body, the rigid body, and now he should. We might see we already have an issue with the jump not being high enough. So let's say this like 100. See, you can see how low the jump is. So it needs to be a very, very high variable. And what I can also do is, you see here, I'm changing here. I don't even have to go back to the script and change it. Right here, it's automatically public, and I can change everything inside this script here. So what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to raise this, and you saw here, if I hover here, it's got the little bracket that goes left and right. I could just scroll it. Alright, so that looks to be still a little low. Let's go like 545 or so. Let's go a little less, 500. Alright, that looks fine. Alright, so that looks good. And now you'll notice a little bug right here. As you notice, I could keep clicking and it doesn't have any issues with that. And I'm waiting for him to come back down. He did something. He collided with something. Okay. So, basically what we're going to do is we have to get rid of this bug. And how we're going to do that is we're going to have to change this to get rid of the that particular bug. So what we're going to do is, this is the last thing we're going to do before we look at the documentation in this particular tutorial, is we're going to go in here and I'm going to create a another function on collision enter 2D. Call collision 2D. Okay. So basically what that means is that we have a function that's called when two, remember how we did the collider 2D? So when two of the colliders collide, it will automatically look inside of all your scripts and enter into the function called onCollisionEnter2D. So now what we want to look for is when his feet hit the floor, he can then jump again. That way when he's in the air, he cannot jump again. So he has to wait till he comes all the way back down, hits the floor, then he could jump again. So what we need to check is to see if the collider of his feet or the entire body hits the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do if call.gameObject.tag is equal to floor. So basically you'll figure this out. I'll show you guys this in a second. And basically for this, I'm going to need to change it from my camera back to my character, which I probably should have in the first place. That way you'll see the collision. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable up here. I'm going to call it variable I'm going to call it jump BG, jump bug. It's going to be of type Boolean. Boolean is either true or false. Just like a light switch, either on or off, Boolean's true or false. So I'm going to have this false. I think I go true because I want to jump at the beginning. So what we're going to do is we're going to check. Why did it say call? It's call. This call right here. Call. Collider collision 2D. And I'll go over what this block is here in a second. What I'm going to do is set the jump. Oops. Jump to true. And then I'm going to be done with that. So what I'm going to do here is after he jumps, I'm going to set jump to false. One second here. Let me go ahead and, because that's probably annoying you guys. It keeps popping up. Okay, jump is equal to false. So after I jump, it will set jump equal to false, and we'll wait till those two colliders hit each other. So let me go ahead and build this. Oh, this needs to be jump BG. This needs to be jump BG. What the heck? Yeah, sometimes the automatic fill-in will automatically change that stuff. It's kind of annoying. Okay. So what we need to... Oh, okay. Now, let me go over what this means. Alright, so basically, like I said, when two colliders collide, it will look for this function inside of our program. And this only works if it's a 2D collider. Notice the 2D. It will not work if you put 3D or just on collision enter. You need to put on collision enter 2D. Then call is the collision, is the identifier, just like up here, identifier of type collision 2D. So basically what I'm talking about is that particular collision that's happening or happened, I'm going to call it call, and it is of type collision 2D, right? So I'm going to look at call and see if that particular game object has a tag called floor. And if you're not familiar with the equals equals, that's basically a comparison operation. And if it has a tag of type floor, and then the jump bug equals true, and it'll allow me to add allow me to jump again. Oops, that's fine. Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to go to platform. We need to do a couple things. We need to go to platform 1, and you notice we have this thing called tag, and we could actually add a tag. And then my list of tags I came up with is empty. I'm going to call it floor. So now after I have the tag floor, and this is in the like the inspector, this is in like the options area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to platform 1. And I'm going to add that tag to it. So now I could add tags like a character, I could add as many. Well, for the free version you can only have a certain number of tags, but you could. I think that's how it still works. But I want to have a tag for like our character and a tag for the floor. So whenever a collision happens, it knows what we're colliding with. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to add... Yeah, this was the animation that I added to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that script here, and then I'm going to delete that script from here, because I already see an issue that if I don't have it there, it's not going to work. And I think that is... I think this was 500. And I'm going to add my main camera. So I guess this is another time you're going to see it work again. Character here. Character again here. Character Rigidbody. Okay. That should be fine. Alright, so let's go ahead and run it and see if we have any errors that I missed. Whoops. Accidentally added my main character to the wrong spot. Main camera. So main character, main character, main camera. Okay. There we go. I can still jump. I must have missed one issue in my logic here. Ah! I forgot to add to my if. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my and symbol. I'm going to say if jump BG is equals true. So basically what that means is that if I click that button, the fire 1, and my jump BG boolean is true, my character will jump. Now if it's false, it will just go through and it will ignore that click. It will do nothing with that click and just continue moving your character and continue moving your local position and mapping that to your character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build that again. And now I should not have an issue jumping. I'm clicking, as you could probably hear in the mic. I'm clicking as many times as I can. He's not adding another force. And once he hits the ground, he will jump again. So I go wait, 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 jump. Try to click again, does not work. Alright, so now our game here is fixed of all of its mechanical bugs. All the mechanics work now. So now everything else is additional. So now of course we need enemies, we need level design, we need level art, etc, etc, etc. So let me go ahead and show you guys what the documentation would look like. So it looks something like this here. So I'm on to the documentation. How you get there is you go to Unity Game Engine and you'll click on Learn, then you'll click on Documentation, then you'll click on Scripting API, and this will jump you to the Scripting API. If you want to learn more about Unity, of course you're learning about Unity in my tutorials, but you can also check out the manual where it has a lot of different tutorials and stuff like that. But right now we're looking at the Scripting API to look at different methods that we could use inside of Unity's game engine. So let me go ahead and show you where I got stuff like the Rigidbody 2D. So you notice here that in the documentation I went to the Rigidbody 2D.add force. So public function is a public function. It can be used, obviously you wouldn't make a function private, kind of defeats the purpose, but add force, it accepts the parameters of a type of a force. The force, what they call, right, is this is, you can select your language, JavaScript or C#. So you can see it's different in C#. It says vector2 force. In this case it says the identifier force is of type vector2. So we said vector2.up, so you can do vector2.down, vector2.left, vector2.right, or whatever, or you can even do a custom number on there. And then you also notice that we multiplied that by our jump. And there's also a force mode, which we could also click and see what that is. So add a force to Rigidbody using its mass, add an instant force impulse to Rigidbody 2D using its mass. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, so collision or impact. So in this case we're using force. Sweet. I see. So impulse is basically like you're applying that force to everything. So like a more generic force, while force here is realistic physics because it takes into effect the mass. So technically it's an acceleration. You're adding an acceleration, not necessarily force. And then your mass depends on how fast how good the force is. Impulse is just straight force. The mass does not have a variable and does not have its impact. And you see that by clicking on all this stuff that's purple with lines, we could jump to that section. So here I'm looking at the vector2 is a structure. Why is it? It's a structure in Unity. Also a class, I guess you could call it. Down, left, 1, right, up, 0, magnitude. The different variables I could pull. You could look at the X, you could look at the Y, vector2 constructor, normalize, set, toString, max, min, move towards, all different kinds of stuff. Alright, so I guess that is basically, oh yeah, going back to that, make sure that, you know, if you're confused about how any of these things work, you know, you could obviously ask me questions in the comments, or you could go look at the documentation. Everything is there on the documentation. It'll also help you learn more when you step away from my tutorials and want to do stuff by yourself. I might not be there, but the documentation will always be there for you. So it's definitely a good resource to get very used to using it, because in Unity, the more you try it, of course, you spend less time on documentation. You just remember stuff, and you have previous projects you work on that you could just go and grab stuff from. But when I'm working on something new that I don't quite understand yet, that I'm using different types of the API, for example, the new 4.6 UI, and obviously we're in... Oh, that's another thing. I also updated this to the recent version right now, 5.1.2 at the current time. But back to what I was saying. So the new 4.6 UI, where it resizes itself, very beautiful UI. I had to go into the documentation a lot to set up a strictly UI based application for simulation. It was basically like 30 to 40% on the using the documentation and 60% writing code in Unity. So 40% of the time that I was coding, that I was trying to make this simulation, I was on the documentation learning new methods that I could use to put into my my application, you know, learning the new UI. So that's similar to what you would probably experience, if not up to 60% on the documentation and 40% writing code in Unity. Similar to how it is right now. You're probably watching tutorials 60% of the time and doing 40% of the stuff in Unity. It might continue there, and it will just get to where you're better and better, and you'll spend less and less time on the documentation. But then again, it is a good thing if you go on the documentation, because you're learning new things and you're pushing your boundaries as an application or a game developer. Alrighty, so yeah, another note that I'm going to say again, make sure you save your scene so that you have it. And yeah, so we have our basic mechanics of our game. We have the jump mechanic, we got rid of the jump bug, and we have our constant moving character to the right, and also our constantly following camera to our character. Alright, so this has been Steven from LegitTechTutorials. I thank you for watching this tutorial. If you like this video, please subscribe for more videos like it in this series and other series as well. I will see you guys in the next Unity tutorial, and I'll catch you guys later. We'll do some more fun stuff. Take it easy. Peace.